Hello, junkies. As you guys can already tell, this week it's me, A Real Girl, the director of Doom herself, behind the mic for this week's 2020 Talkie Talk. I'm so excited. We are here with episode 4 of the Nocturnal Throwback. This is the 2007 podcast novel that helped launch Scott towards the literary stratosphere. As we've done before and will continue to do throughout this podcast, we include the original Talkie Talk from the original post back in 2007. You can use your podcast app's fast forward button to skip through to the story if you're not into the 2007 Talkie Talk. On this episode, there is information about a guest episode Scott did on the Dawn and Drew show, where he reads You're a Damn Fool, Charlie Brown. What's interesting about this is if you can find it out there on the internets, that might be the only place you can still hear it, because you can't get it from us. And this week's story so far is by yet another podcast luminary, this one from Buffy Between the Lines, Tabs Smith Chalice. There is some other fun stuff in the Time Capsule Talkie Talk, including a promo from P.G. Holyfield's Murder at Avedon Hill, which is still available at Apple Podcasts. I really hope you dig it. As for what's happening here at the Lair of Doom in 2020, Scott has finished what I always call quote-unquote principal photography on Mount Fitzroy. He's finished the final draft of the actual story. Right now, he's going back over the notes he made during that final draft, and he should be sending it off to his editor next week. Oh my goodness, he should be sending it off to his editor next week. Still no word on adjusted publication dates for Fitzroy, but we are confident it's in 2020. And right now, it's at 265,000 words, which is over 1,000 pages on 8.5 by 11 paper. So we know it's been a long time coming, but it's absolutely girthy and worth the wait. Alrighty, that's enough. Let's crank up our throwback machine and get our flashback on. Here we go with Nocturnal Throwback, Episode 4.
Welcome to the podcast novel Nocturnal, episode number 4. Nocturnal is a podcast-only novel you can't buy in stores and you can't peek at the end. Written and performed by Scott Sigler. More information and more free stories at scottsigler.com. This book contains adult language, mature situations, and lots of violence. So crank up the volume. If you're easily offended, I would turn it off. Hello, my junkies, and welcome to episode 4 of Nocturnal. Not only is this one on time, it's a day early. Before I start, I have a guest episode on the Dawn and Drew show. It is one of my most fucked up stories of all time. So you guys should go over to www.dawnandrew.com to check out that story. And that one is called You're a Damn Fool, Charlie Brown. Prepare to have your childhood memories twisted and corrupted. And once again, there's a little bit more talkie talk at the end of this episode. But enough about me. Let's figure out what's going on with Bryan and Pookie.
Hi, this is Tabs, producer of the podcast audio drama Buffy Between the Lines at www.buffybetweenthelines.com. But you didn't come here for me. You came here to hear the master of the macabre, Scott Sigler. So let's go on to the story so far. In the last episode, homicide detective Bryan Clauser arrived at a murder scene to find that the victim was the teenage boy he had dreamt of killing the night before. Every aspect of the murder scene matches Bryan's dream, leading him to wonder if he could have done the grisly deed. The body was delivered to medical examiner Robin Hudson, Bryan's ex-girlfriend. She began her preliminary examination and immediately saw what she thought were tooth marks on the victim, one Alex Panos, a member of the Boys' Company gang. The marks looked deep and jagged, as if someone had bit down on Panos and then shook him like a dog shakes a chew toy.
San Francisco Chief of Police Amy Zoe looked through the disorganized, half-disintegrated manila folder a third time, just to make sure she understood everything. The pictures of the boy's corpse nailed to a brick wall were disturbing, even for a woman who had spent 2 decades on the force and had seen more than her fair share of man's inhumanity to man. The body, however, wasn't what really got to her. What did get to her was the symbol. She hadn't seen that symbol in, 15 years? And she prayed to God every single night that she would never see it again. Bryan Clauser and Pookie Chang sat patiently on the other side of her desk, waiting for her to speak. Behind them, people passed by her open office door, a brief distracting glimpse gone in one step. She almost always left the door open, even with such a grisly discussion as they had before them. She wasn't alone for this conversation. Sub-Chief Sean Robertson stood behind her and a bit to the left. He sported trendy, narrow black glasses that should have looked ridiculous on a man in his early 40s, yet somehow they fit his face well. He wore a button-down white shirt, red tie, polyester pants, and no-nonsense shoes. Robertson rarely looked mad, rarely looked happy, and was everyone's worst nightmare on the poker table. Arms crossed over his chest, he stood tall and looked down on the sitting Bryan and Pookie. The 2 homicide detectives, on the other hand, looked nervous, fidgety. She knew both men, although not all that well. Pookie Chang didn't seem like the fidgety type, and Bryan Clauser usually showed all the emotion of a fire hydrant. They were probably antsy to get out there and find out who had done this horrible thing. They both looked a bit tired, especially Bryan, and that wasn't surprising. It was 10 a.m., and he worked at night, so he'd been working something like 15 hours straight. The victim, one Alex Panos. Still missing arm torn off at the shoulder. Railroad spikes used to nail the body to a wall. Fingers from the missing arm found under a dumpster. Fingers that had been used to draw the symbols. And someone, probably the killer, had urinated all over the boy. Pookie and Bryan had been keeping up on the missing gangsters, the ones that someone had already dubbed as the Pissman case, so the dead boy naturally fell to them. Bryan and Pookie were sharp. They'd pursue the case with everything they had, but they wouldn't figure this out. It would be over and fade away before they could find anything significant. These cases always ended like that.
All right, gentlemen, what are your next steps?
Panos was a member of a small gang called the Boys Company, or Boyko. We're going to round up the rest of them and see what they know.
I haven't heard of Boys Company.
They're small potatoes, Robertson said. Gang runs out of Galileo High. There's only 4 of them, we think. They usually dress up in Boston college gear to declare their allegiance. Bryan looked up at Robertson, like a missing piece had just clicked deep in his brain.
Boston College?
Bryan asked. The idea seemed to bother him.
Their colors are crimson and gold, right?
Robertson nodded. Yep. The Golden Eagles of Boston College. Much of their gear just shows the initials BC, which the gang uses to represent Boys Company.
Why not the Boston Celtics, then?
That's because green and black are the colors of the Spanish Cobras. Anyone from Boyko wearing Celtics gear is going to get fucked up by the Cobras or any of the gangs that are fighting with the Cobras. You know, pretty much every gang has some sports team affiliation, either with colors or initials. Kids got to be real careful what colors they wear to school these days. Amy drummed her fingers on the desktop.
Galileo is a science prep school. Gangs running science prep schools now?
Well, gangs are pretty much everywhere now, Chief. It's not just Chinatown and the Mission these days. She nodded. She knew all of this. Sometimes she just liked to talk out loud.
And the rest of the gang? They weren't in school today?
Pookie shrugged.
No, of course not. One of their own got whacked. They're either laying low if they know who it was and why, or they're out looking around if they don't. They don't attend school all that much anyway. We know they're turf, we just have to track them down. Fine. So you check out the gang members, see if Alex made any new enemies. What else?
We'll review his school records, talk to the principal.
Good. When?
Today after school. His name is Kyle Solar. He already said he's going to meet us.
What about the boy's family?
Pookie shrugged. The usual. Mother is devastated. Father could care less. Neither know anyone specific who would have wanted their son dead, but they knew he was a bad kid.
And how bad was he?
About as bad as a 16-year-old can be, Bryan said. Lots of fighting, theft, vandalism. A real bully at school, apparently. Amy looked hard at Bryan. He looked shaken. And Bryan Clauser never looked shaken. He was the SFPD's nightman. The guy who talked to people at 3 in the morning. The guy who knew the evening crowd. He'd been on the force for 10 years, and from day one had opted for the overnight shift. When he made detective, he kept the same hours. He and Pookie worked as a team, Pookie doing most of his work from noon to midnight, and Bryan doing most of his from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. They overlapped for 5 hours or so, working together at those times, working solo the rest. It made for a very unique, very effective combination. As a team, they covered about 14 or 15 hours a day. Bryan also had a nickname. Within the department, he was known as the Ninja. Several reasons for the name, the first of which was the man's obvious tendency to dress all in black. The second was that the guy moved like a shadow, real silent. You could hear Pookie coming a mile away, but Klauser's footsteps made no noise. The final reason was a bit more disturbing. Bryan Klauser had killed 3 men over the course of 10 years, all in the line of duty. All cases involving a hostage situation, another cop in serious trouble. In all the cases, if Bryan hadn't done what he'd done, each of those 3 cops would have probably died. Pookie Chang was the first guy to be saved before Bryan made detective. John Smith was the second, and Tonda Murphy was the third. Normally, no cop would ever be on the force after killing 2 people, no matter what the time period between them, let alone 3 people in 10 years. But when the perps died so that a cop could live, well, that was the kind of case that was dealt with as quietly as possible. Internal affairs went through the motions, of course, but that was really just to cover asses. When you kill someone to save another cop's life, there's just no way in hell the department will let you go down for that. Bryan worked the graveyard shift, often alone, and he'd killed 3 people. That meant Bryan Klauser was tougher than a set of scratched brass knuckles. And now the Nightman, the Ninja, looked a little freaked. Bryan was a machine, methodical, calculating, patient. Once he locked onto a suspect, he brought him down, no matter how long it took. He usually had all the emotional reaction of a tree trunk.
What's wrong, Bryan? You look like this one is messing with you.
Bryan's eyes widened. He looked at Pookie, then looked back. He looked, Amy thought, like someone who just had his hand caught in the cookie jar. Maybe it is getting to me, just a little bit. She nodded slowly.
Getting to you, just a bit. Any reason why? Anything you want to share with me?
Bryan looked away.
Just look at the pictures, Chief, Pookie said, leaning forward. The kid's fucking arm is gone. This isn't the typical date and dash, you know?
Amy turned on Pookie, her eyes narrowing.
I've told everyone we don't use casual terminology for rape, Detective Chang. If you're using that language in front of me, I can only imagine what an insensitive fuck you are on the street.
Pookie looked down.
Yes, Chief, I'm sorry. I don't want to hear that crap again. You got it, Detective?
Pookie looked up and shrugged.
Yes, Chief, it just slipped out. It won't happen again.
She waved her hand, dismissing the detectives. They left quickly. Robertson closed the door. What do you think, Chief? Should we assign someone else? Amy thought, then shook her head.
We can't.
But, Chief, Pookie is really, really good. And Klauser, he's just so focused. Cop shit is his entire life. The 2 of them, they might figure something out.
They've been following the Pissman case ever since it started. They said it would eventually fall to homicide, and they're right. If we'd have known the symbols would turn up in relation to those cases, we could have done something, but we didn't know. We put someone else on it now, and it's going to look very strange.
I know, Chief, but still...
We can't let them not have it, Sean. Don't worry. They won't find anything. No one ever does. I'll holler if I need anything else.
Sean Robertson nodded once, then opened the door and walked out. Amy was still pissed at Pookie for that insensitive comment. Even with a female chief of police, the male-dominated cop culture still prevailed. Date and dash as a casual term for rape, the ultimate violation of a woman. She'd made it clear she didn't want terminology like that used. Everyone knew it. Pookie knew it. Amy stopped and looked out into the hall. Pookie knew better than that. And he'd said it right when she was asking Bryan why he was shaken. Did Pookie say that on purpose, to draw her attention away from Bryan? What was up with those 2? Her fingers drummed on the desktop. She couldn't do anything about the symbol. These things just had to run their course. Maybe Pookie and Bryan would find something, and she'd have to step in, but probably not. When that symbol was involved, you didn't find clues. You only found corpses.
You better get your shit straight, Pookie said in a hiss when they got back into the Buick. I thought you had the ultimate poker face, and look at you. You would have thought she accused you of molesting her twin girls, and that you're guilty.
Bryan looked out the passenger window. He didn't want to look at Pookie, because Pookie was right. I'm sorry, man. It's just fucked up is all. I'm telling you, that is exactly the kid that was in my dreams. How would you feel if it was you?
Don't pull that shit on me. This is some fucked up shit, I'll give you that. But don't talk about your dreams anymore, you got it? You're gonna slip up and talk about it in front of someone else. And then guess what? You're an official suspect.
Bryan stared without looking. A suspect?
That's right. Then I have to cuff you. And it won't be to the bedpost so I can give you a nice date and dash, you fucking homo.
Bryan laughed. Just a little. But it was a scripted laugh. Pookie was trying to cheer him up. But nothing was going to cheer him up. Because in Bryan's mind, he was a suspect. He dreamed of killing Alex Panos, who wound up dead, and just the way Bryan had pictured it. He was a suspect, all right, and a qualified one at that. Because Bryan Clauser wasn't 100% sure, that he hadn't done it in real life, and not just in his dreams. To most people, being nicknamed after a character on The Simpsons would be less than flattering. But not for John Smith. Come on, just look at the name, John Smith. The single most common name in America and in England. He hated that name. He loved his mom's, but when other black mothers were naming their children sweet names like Marquis, Jermaine, Andre, Deshaun, or even some made-up shit like X-Ray, his mom settled on John. So when he joined the SFPD 10 years back, and Pookie Chang tried to get a rise out of him by calling him John the Mr. Blackburns Smith, it didn't bother John at all. And when everyone else picked up on it, laughing at how his overbite, his long nose, and his mottled bald head did, indeed, make him look like a black Mr. Burns, John loved it. He had a nickname. Something people could remember. A name that wasn't shared by 500,000 men in America. And for that, seeing Pookie always put a smile on John's face.
Hey, Pooks,
John said, reaching out to shake Pookie's hand. Pookie had to juggle his overflowing, ever-present manila folder to answer the shake.
What up, player? Hey, where's the ninja? He's sleeping.
John checked his watch.
Oh, man, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. What's he doing sleeping? The man works all night long, Blackburns. He keeps the city safe while your ass is tucked away under your Hello Kitty blankets. No problem, man. Hey, whatever the hell Bryan wants to do is fine by me.
Pookie nodded. The two men shared a quiet understanding. If not for Bryan Clauser, neither one of them would be alive.
So what brings you down to the gang task force, Pookie?
Pookie gave his head a little shake, as if to clear out the cobwebs, then fumbled with his manila folder. As long as John had known him, Pookie always seemed to carry a folder or two, bent, wrinkled, covered with hastily scribbled notes in pen or pencil, and barely containing copious amounts of paper and photographs. Pookie set the folder down and flipped through the disorganized contents until he found 3 photographs. 2 were of symbols on the back of a dumpster, painted in runny red paint. The third was of a big, mutilated man nailed to a brick wall.
Holy shit. That looks messy, Pooks. Literally and figuratively, Black Mr. Burns. Murder of a 16-year-old boy. A wannabe gangster.
Shit.
That big fellow was only 16?
Pookie nodded.
He was a corn-fed one, that's for sure. He was in the boys' company. You know them?
Oh, sure, man. I know them all, Pooks. Boyko's pretty small potatoes. Little pot dealer, nothing serious. Really off the map unless you're a free agent at Galileo.
Free agent?
Yeah, man. He's not in a gang. Or not on a wrestling team, football team, etc. Boyko one of those groups that finds the weak ones and kicks his shit out of them just to make themselves feel better.
So they beat up a lot of kids?
John shrugged.
That's the word. Not out of the ordinary for any school in the city, really. What was the leader's name? It was a Pancake or something like that. You're close. It's Alex Panos, and you're looking right at him. Adios, Alex. So maybe someone wanted revenge on this kid. Yeah, sure. I bet there's dozens that would have wanted to kill him. But keep in mind that Boyko didn't really start shit with established gangs, and they stayed away from popular kids. So the ones they pick on, the weak ones... John gestured to the photo showing the boy nailed to the brick wall. Those kids probably couldn't do some shit like this. Yeah, but they could hire someone. John nodded. Yeah, that's true. It don't cost much these days to have someone offed. And this looks like a vendetta killing. A big one. Someone wanted to send a message. You know anyone that has a similar MO? No, man. Gangs will shoot at you, stab you, beat you, sometimes even burn your ass alive. But I never seen one tear off a guy's arm and spike him to the wall. What's with these other pictures? The symbols. I was hoping you could tell me. I want my palm read. I go to Mr. Biznass in North Beach. I want a blowjob that makes me pass out. I go to Princess Carmela in the Mission. I want to know what gang graffiti means. I come to the Black Mr. Burns. John smiled. Well, I'm flattered to be in company with transvestite hookers and Tourette's-afflicted fortune-tellers, but I never seen these symbols before. Are you sure? John nodded. Yeah, I'm sure. It doesn't look like anything we've seen. Looks like real messy work, but it's not spray paint, right? Right. It's blood. What? Blood. Alex's blood. Oh, you gotta be shitting me. I shit you not. Damn. I'm sure glad I only deal with gangs. You guys in Homicide, you get all the sick fucks. Pookie started to restuff his folder. Well, thanks for nothing, douchebag. Now, hold on there, boy. Just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it hadn't been seen. Let's get this scanned in and see what the computer says. John scanned in both photos, then opened them up in his computer and accessed the FBI's Symbol Analysis Database, also known as SAD. He used the program to trace the symbols. That's a hell of a program. Can you also use it to draw chicks with big boobies? That's all we do when the doors are closed, man. This software identifies key points much like a fingerprint, marking the degree of curves, the thickness, and relative length of lines, and breaking down individual segments of the symbols into 100 mini-symbols. Then I feed it into the database and it searches for matches, partial or full. Does this crap really work? John nodded. Oh, hell yeah. It's priceless. We can use this to identify the spread of gangs in our area. It's amazing. It can even build a graphic profile on individual artists. Just like an expert analyzing handwriting to determine authentic versus forgeries. The computer beeped. So did it find anything on my symbols? John opened a window to read the results. Damn, Pooks, you're out of luck. Nothing? Not a damn thing. This hasn't been recorded before, not as far as the system knows. So what you're saying is that this is new? John nodded. Yeah, it seems to be so. Well, thanks a whole fucking lot, Black Mr. Burns. You've been very helpful. Glad to be of service, my man. Pookie gathered his papers and pictures, stuffing them once again into the abused manila folder. He opened the door to leave, then turned, a smile on his face. Come on, do it for me just once. John laughed, then affected an evil smile. He held his hands in front of him like claws, touching the tips of his left finger to the tips of his right. Excellent, Smithers! Excellent! Pookie nodded sagely, as if John had just said the most wise words in all the world. Mr. Burns should have been black. Oh, he is black, man. He's the Snoop Dogg of the cartoon world. The networks just colorize his ass because America fears a rich black man. That's just plain racist. Damn straight. Pookie nodded and walked out the door, leaving John to look at the symbols scanned into his computer. Man, be careful, Pooks, John said quietly. This here looks like some pretty fucked up shit. John, the Black Mr. Burns, Smith, was wrong. The symbols had been recorded before, but they had been deleted. In their place was a complex algorithm, a subroutine designed to catch any searches for the very symbols that Pookie had provided. The subroutine detected the search, documented the images and the time, then formatted that information into a coded message hidden inside a porn spam email. That email shot through the SFPD system until it landed in the inbox of one Sub-Chief Sean Robertson. Sean heard his inbox ding. He gave it a casual glance, as he dealt with about 100 emails an hour, then did a double take when he saw the subject line, Horsecocks and Virgin Twats. It seemed no different from the dozens of porn-related junk mails that sailed through the department's half-ass excuse for a spam filter, but that subject line always hid key information. He opened the email. 15 pictures were attached.
The first 12 were, indeed, disgusting pictures of horse virgin bestiality. The last 3 pictures, though, held symbols. Robertson recognized them instantly. The symbols from the Panos murder. The email said the search had been done under John Smith's login, but odds were John didn't originate it. It had to have been either Bryan or Pookie. "God damn, Pooks," Sean said to himself. "You work fast." Sean called John Smith's office.
Gang Task Force, John Smith speaking.
"Black Mr. Burns," Sean said, smiling to make his voice sound open and happy. He'd read about that trick somewhere, and always used it on the phone. "Sub-Chief Robertson here.
What can I do for you, Chief?
I'm trying to track down Bryan Clouser. Someone said he was in your neck of the woods?"
No, not Bryan, but Pookie was just here. You missed him. You want his cell number?
No, that's okay. I've got it. I'll give him a call. Thanks."
No problem, sir.
Black Mr. Burns hung up. Sean was right. It had been Pookie. Just following up on a lead. It was nothing to worry about, really. Pookie and Bryan were homicide, tracking down a murder. Scanning the symbols was standard procedure. Could have just been gang symbols. Sean would have probably done the same thing himself were he on the case. But then again, Sean might have just asked around, found nothing, and let it go. Bryan and Pookie didn't just let things go. It was what made them so good at what they did. Probably nothing to worry about. Probably. But Sean didn't get his bonus money for probably. He stood and shut the door to his office, then sat down and pulled out his cell phone. He made sure his desk phone hadn't accidentally been turned on or set to speakerphone. Then he called. An answer after just 2 rings.
Talk to me.
"I wanted to let you know, someone might be looking for those friends of yours."
Yeah? Who?
"Couple of guys here in the shop.
Why?
Your friends did a little defacing of public property. Let's call it graffiti. Just so happens to be of interest to these guys."
Graffiti, you say? Does it have anything to do with what went down last night?
"One and the same. Your friends shouldn't have done that. Graffiti is a crime."
Yeah, you're right. So do we need to do anything to protect the privacy of my friends? They're so very shy.
"Oh, no. Just standard procedure at this point. Nothing to worry about. I just wanted to let you know."
Nothing to worry about. You're sure?
Sean paused. It was an interesting feeling, knowing you held the power over life and death with your words, with your decisions. No, not yet. Let it play out."
But you'll let me know if I need to tell my friends their privacy is in jeopardy, yes?
"Yeah, of course. I've got you covered." Sean hung up, realizing that he could call the same number any time, and Pookie Chang would cease to exist. An interesting feeling, to say the least. Well, junkies, I hope you enjoyed episode number 4. Now, I did promise 2 episodes this week, and I'm going to go ahead and count the Dawn and Drew bonus story as a second episode. So you get 3 hits of Siglerosity this week. You get the call-in episode, Nocturnal episode number 4, and a bonus short story over at dawnandrew.com. So before you all start your friggin' bitching, that's a lot of friggin' content. So you're going to listen to it, and you're going to like it, Spalding, and that's how it's going to go. 2 more things to talk about, then I'll let y'all off the hook. First, Infected has been sold to the Dutch. That's right. The Netherlands have bought the rights to Infected. So now, we have sold Infected in Germany, England, Australia, Scotland, and the Netherlands. We're still working on some kind of Spanish language translation for it. And for God's sakes, people, if you know anyone in the publishing industry over in Japan or in China or in Korea, please get a hold of me. Gotta work on those people. The Japanese love their monsters, and I got monsters for them to love. It's a marriage that's destined to happen. We just got to facilitate that along. And finally, since you all seem to enjoy Misery from your favorite podcast author so much, I'm going to tell you a little story. I have upgraded my equipment with some of the book money that came in. I got a new sound effects processor, which of course I haven't quite figured out how to use yet. Channel strip, which has got a thing called a tube preamp, which basically is helping make the voice sound better and getting a fatter signal into the computer. All of this doesn't matter. What matters is this gear is in a rack, which is up on top of a cabinet in my closet. I rearranged the closet. I'm still in the closet, people. Go ahead. Hold on. Let me give you a second, a moment of silence for your in the closet jokes, and go. You're funny. So the rack is up on top of a cabinet. So in order to play with the sound effects unit, I have to stand up on a chair. Well, this is a closet, folks. It's not very big. So I've got my computer sitting on the desk, coffee cup sitting in front of the computer. I'm fully aware this is a bad setup. You can see what's happening, what's coming right now. So I'm up on the chair and literally thinking to myself, I better be careful not to fall off this chair because I'm going to fall in the closet and crash and it's going to suck. And of course, I did. So I'm standing on the chair playing with the controls and the sound effects thing. My foot slips. I fall off the chair. I put my hand down to catch myself on the desk. Hand hits the coffee cup edge. And much like a medieval catapult, the torque physics force of my hand falling at terminal velocity on the edge of the coffee cup tilted the coffee cup at such velocity that a full cup of coffee literally hosed down the walls of my closet. So my closet now has coffee stains all over the wall. The coffee bounces off the wall and onto my MacBook Pro. So now I've got coffee spilled on the MacBook Pro, coffee in the walls. But we're not done yet. Then the coffee cup tips, it lands, the remaining coffee spills out across the desk and soaks my mouse. Now my my optical mouse makes this weird clicky noise. It's sticky. It's full of coffee somehow. I'm afraid to take it apart and clean it because I'm pretty sure I'm going to wind up breaking something. So my mouse smells like coffee. It sticks when it clicks because there's kind of coffee jammed up in there. I've got a little drawer under my desk that's supposed to be for a keyboard, but I use that to put all of my hard drives on, my backup hard drives. I missed that when I was cleaning up, so now there's a giant dried coffee stain on there, and it's kind of modern artish. And I'm going to leave it. It looks, maybe I'll take a picture, put it up on Flickr. So this giant crash happened and chewed up literally a good hour and a half of potential recording time. So I'm going to go ahead and blame not getting a second episode on the coffee crash. Oh, and I'm okay. I'm okay, people. I know you're only worried about getting your fucking second episode of Nocturnal this week. Don't mind me. I'm just the guy who fell off the fucking chair and landed on a coffee cup. I'm sure I'm going to be just fine, you fucking junkies. Unbelievable. Well, I do have to say, we're 4 for 4 on Nocturnal episodes, plus bonus content, plus the Dawn and Drew short story. So for all of you doubters, all you naysayers, all you people who are like, hey, Scott, you're going to be inconsistent and not get your stories out on time. All I can say to you is suck my ass. Suck my ass. I have never missed an episode in my 17 years of podcasting, dating right back to when Al Gore and I sat down and we said, you know what we need? We need a way for all the computers to talk to each other. And then everybody can talk to each other on those computers. Let's call it the internet. Then that rotten lying cocksucker goes out and wins a fucking Oscar and a Nobel, and I can't even win a fucking Parsec because of goddamn Matt Wallace and his fucking Parsec nipple piercings. All right, I'm digressing. I'm sorry about that. I do want to give a very begrudging shout out to my arch nemesis, J.C. Hutchins, who has signed a book deal with St. Martin's Press. So book deals are starting to happen for the podcast authors. There's me, there's Seth Harwood with Jack Wakes Up. There's now J.C. Hutchins, who is out on a big fucking publisher. St. Martin's Press is a big deal. So congratulations to you, J.C. Hutchins. I hope you can afford bodyguards now so that when I try and have you killed, at least the money I'm spending on assassins will be money well spent. I want to know that I'm getting value for my dollar. So this will probably be the only episode this week, junkies. I'm preparing for Thanksgiving. We're actually having people over for Thanksgiving. And this is the first time I've ever done this in my whole life, where I'm having people over to my house for Thanksgiving. So this afternoon, completely re-spackling, repainting the bathroom. It's just been a disaster. I haven't got to it because I spent all my time with you guys. I'm also writing new original fiction for Infected. This is original content that's only going to go on the pay-for audiobook. So we'll have the podcast, which will continue to be free. We'll have the hardcover version, which will not be free, and y'all better fucking save your pennies for that shit. because world takeovers don't happen on a budget of zero. And then we're going to have the downloadable audiobook and the CD, which is going to have probably a good extra hour worth of bonus side content. So I got to write all that new stuff. That's what I'll be working on this week. So Work for Infected continues to pop up, continues to get in the way of really digging into the Nocturnal podcast. So what you're getting now is about 50% effort on the Nocturnal podcast. When I crank that bitch up to 80%, you guys are going to be shocked. Yes, it can get even better. It's true. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope you all get to spend time with friends and family. And of course, being me, I hope your Thanksgiving also degenerates into a dysfunctional argument with your weird Uncle Albert. You know, the guy who likes to put the lampshade on his head and as the night progresses, dress up in women's clothes and do his rendition of Cher singing on a battleship. I know all about your family, and it's okay. And also this Thanksgiving, if you know a soldier, you know anybody in the armed services, make sure you stop, take a minute to thank them for everything that we have in this country. And if you do have any friends overseas who are serving right now, let's hope that they all come back safe and sound. Have a great Thanksgiving and clear your schedule for Nocturnal episodes 5 through 8, because you ain't seen nothing yet.
The Land of Cairn. It is a world where gods can choose to live mortal lives to directly affect events in the world, and often do. The river of magic is rising. Monsters are moving into Cairn through tears in the fabric. The dead are escaping Callan's abyss, and the children of Aj have returned, just as the prophets foretold. But even as these overarching events play themselves out, a piece of the puzzle falls into place in the seemingly unremarkable town of Avedon Hill. Aramis Cragen, retired Aaronic advisor, arrives at Avedon Hill and is asked to investigate the murder of Greta Platt, the Avedon Manor housemistress. But in doing so, Aramis uncovers secrets that threaten Cairn's very foundation. What begins as a search for justice becomes a fight for survival, all in a place where nothing is what it seems. Welcome to the Land of Cairn. Welcome to Murder at Avedon Hill, a podcast novel by P.G. Holyfield, featuring some of the great voices of podcasting and podcast fiction.
A perfect place for Greta Platt to escape the troubles of the day. So beautiful, so inspiring. Also a fine place for someone to catch her defenseless and end her life.
Not now, Joris. You chose the wrong time for one of your rants about undead threats rising in Cairn.
There's evil here in Avedon Hill. You can never be sure what will greet you at your door.
Of course it has to be alive. You should have known that, monk.
You promised us the hunter, and you have failed us. You promised us a power beyond our understanding, and again, you have failed us.
You have not seen what I have seen. Events are transpiring that neither you nor I can affect.
Aaron's powers have peaked from under those covers. I hope you both survive long enough to find a use.
Brother of Aaron, look how you've aged. You've spent so much of your life in darkness.
Murder at Avedon Hill by P.G. Holyfield. Sit back and let the mystery unfold. Learn more at pgholyfield.com and podiobooks.com.
You have been listening to Nocturnal, written and performed by Scott Sigler. For more information, go to scottsigler.com. All music in this podcast provided by Uncrowned off their album Devils and Angels, available now at the iTunes Music Store.